how do you view then Bill Snyder overall? Because I hear that a lot from players, like that the offseason was grueling, that like bowl prep and bowl practices could be a particularly grueling time of the year. And I mean, heck, even the practices throughout the year that are like 3 hours long, right? Like how do you kind of reconcile all that at the end of the day, that he was very tough, but obviously, I mean, it worked. You guys won a lot of games.
For me, I think, it was helpful. I don't, that saying of throwing the baby away with the bathwater. And it's unfortunate that, in the culture that we live in, and people make it seem like it's just millennials, but I get it more for people that are older, the generation before the millennials, that you can't say anything negative about a person, or it's a lie, especially when we hold people in, very cherished positions. But like I said, Coach Snyder has done, a lot of great things. And there's a lot of great things with mental toughness and, discipline that he instilled. But there's, I was in the receiver room, and I don't think that there wasn't anybody in the receiver room that didn't get hurt. Like we were, there's when you start, and like for me, I've had to learn a lot more about, training and the science behind actually working out and doing this. Because I do skills training, but I want to know, from a biomechanic, in a physical aspect, if it makes sense, why are we doing this, nutrition, all this kind of stuff. And there's a thing where there's overtraining, and I think that we were definitely in that vein. And it's like, it becomes not beneficial. And I think that, towards the end of the season, there's a very strong correlation of us losing bowl games, So for me, my ultimate goal was to win a national championship. And like I said before, I thought that our team was good enough to do it. Now, this is taken into account if we didn't play Alabama. I don't think we could have beat Alabama. We have to have a perfect game to beat Alabama. But I'm thankful for things that he did that were good, and there's things that were not so good that I've kind of been vocal about too. So
yeah. So can you expand more on that? I mean, is it just the overtraining part of it there? Like what to you bothers you when you think back to it?
I think some of it's a little bit personal that I don't want to get into about personal that aren't, so that isn't great to say for him. But there's like for instance, there was the issue. There was the thing with the transfer thing, and there was a kid. I can't think of his name. I think he played receiver. There was a kid that tried to transfer and transfer out. And, when he tried to transfer, he got it blocked, and ultimately he got it granted. And when he did that, he said some things about, players not being able to play because of drug tests and things like that, which that's an absolute lie. And because players did have certain things like that happen and other things and still be able to play. And then it's like, and for me, it really pissed me off because it's this kid that's, 19 years old, and he's trying to go somewhere else because of whatever reason it didn't work out. But it's like you bash him on the way out, and and I told Sean Snyder this, because he texted me about it, and it's like it's unfortunate that I thought he said he thought that my experience at K-State was good. I was like, well, nobody actually asked me what my experience at K-State was like, and I was like, you can see the hypocrisy, and one of the reasons that our team was really good was that we had a pretty good group of guys that transferred in, but at the same time, you're not allowing guys to leave if it doesn't work out for them. So that's I think there was some hypocrisy, and that's probably one of the things. There's some hypocrisy that people may not know, that are just fans, casual fans, and I'm like I said, and I wasn't just there at a random time. I was there with members of his family and things like that. So I was privy to a lot of information that a lot of people may not be privy to. So my experience and how I view him is a little bit different.
Yeah. Hey, first of all, I agree with you on the Corey Sutton situation. Yeah, when he was trying to go to App State, eventually wound up there, and I just appreciate the candor, man. I appreciate that you're willing to open up about that. I guess when we think back to that 2012 season, I'm going to go back to something you were touching on earlier there about the overtraining and that element of it. Like, you guys were clearly pretty beat up by the end of the year, and I always think that Baylor game, like, there was the obvious that Ty Zimmerman was hurt, but it just seemed like the whole team, Colin was obviously fighting through some things. Like, how beat up were you guys by the end of the year in 2012?
Well, okay, I'll put it like this: Arthur couldn't play in the Senior Bowl. They didn't medically clear him to play in the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's enough in itself. So, I mean, those are the type of situations that we had going on. And I'm not faulting, people and medical staff or the coaches and things. I do to a certain extent because there's a integrity maybe that goes into it, but ultimately you have a job to do. And it wasn't the fact, it's not that it's not that they couldn't play, because obviously they played and played great. It was just, that I think there was some protection of the players that I don't think was there. And, ultimately, like I said, the goal is to win a national championship. I mean, maybe that wasn't coach's goal because we didn't really talk about it, but that's the ultimate goal. So you want to protect the players to be able to do that, and we never got there. And then he's gotten close a couple of times. So, I think that, like I said, there's a correlation with us losing bowl games at the end of the year. And players being, hurt at the end of the year. Now, I said I was banged up with going into the combine that I think people think I'm lying when I say it, but it was, it was a reality, and it was amazing, a miracle that, they didn't catch some of the stuff, or they didn't think it was, as bad as it was. But, I think that's where the benefit comes in, right? Because you have developed this mental toughness that you can be able to play through these things. So it's such a tough thing to look at, because it's like there's a negative side of it, there's a positive side, and it's like, where's the middle ground at? And I think that's where, if I had a big gripe with that, was where we didn't really try to find middle ground, even though we had talked about it. Because there was a story where we had we had like a almost boycott of practice during the Pinstripe Bowl year. And ultimately, we had like a team meeting right before practice. And ultimately, we practiced. It was the worst practice ever. People were just out there walking. It was like we should just canceled it. But it was because of we had so many practices, and and it was just this willingness to compromise it. And I think that was a big thing. And I don't want people to take it a certain way. It's like that, because I don't want to be seen as a bitter guy that bashes the coach on the way out. So that's definitely not my MO. Like, if anything, I would use the thing I would thank him. He didn't hurt my my career. I still made millions of dollars playing in the NFL. So it's not. That's not the fact. I just happen to be. Sometimes it's a gift and a curse, but I happen to be way more objective than a lot of people. So I definitely don't want it to come off as I'm trying to bash it, because I'm not. That's not my MO at all. I don't gain anything from that. Actually, I probably lose things from saying the truth of it, because I'm still a person in Kansas that plans on doing stuff in Kansas. So it might hurt me in certain ways.
Yeah, well, for what it's worth, I mean, I think you've been incredibly fair about saying, hey, there's good and bad with this approach. And I think, like, any rational, if you just take off the purple, like, hey, I want to be a huge K-State fan glasses, I think anybody could see that. And some of that is, as a college football coach, and I don't know what you played for, Mark Helfrich, right, at Oregon?
I played for Bellotti.
Okay, yeah. I don't know what your experience was specifically like with him, but I would just think a lot of times in college football, like when you're a coach in that position, like you're not going to be liked by everybody, right? Like that's not really the job.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point, and that's something that I'll consider too. But I think it is an unwillingness to hear, and to listen, that probably got me. That probably made it. It's probably a big driving point that isn't that good.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So 2010, you guys tried to make a point of that. That's why there was a practice boycott, is what you were saying.
We tried to, but a lot of people don't follow through on things that they say they will. So it ended up being only a couple of us that stayed in the locker room, and and then obviously if you're not blind, you see that there's some tension, and then there's a couple of guys that voiced their opinions and just talk about like trying to find a way that we can do the certain things that we do and not go against what our culture is, but finding a way to like keep us from basically destroying ourselves, in a sense, I guess, that's an over exaggerate. I don't want to say destroying ourselves, but like going into that thing where it's like we're fatigued, are overtrained. I guess that's the word I'm using. Overtrained when we try to go play. So none of that was really hurt, and that was probably that was the only time that's happened. So, but that was really dry. I think that was probably the worst bowl prep we had, though. Outside of that, it was better the other years. I'll say that much.
So one thing that stood out to me, and Chris Harper is talking with me about, and this is kind of related on the injury front, but with Coach Snyder, you could never talk about the injuries, right? And so I see the quote where you're talking about Colin and how beat up he was and still not divulging the injury. And it's just funny because I've had other people do the same thing where, like, nobody will talk about what Colin Klein, like, specifically actually went through. And I'm like, is this like the residual effect of Bill Snyder just not wanting to talk about the injuries, or is this out of respect to Colin? My question would just be, like, why the secrecy there still with Colin's injuries at that point?
I like I said, I'm going to talk about my stuff, but I'm not going to get into specifics. Like I said, with Arthur's thing, that was a publicly news. That was public news. Arthur couldn't play in the Senior Bowl. Like, I can't. That's somebody else's body. That's somebody else's situation. That's something he hasn't wanted to disclose. But I think that it kind of hurts him because it makes it more impressive what he did. And I don't think he really cares in a sense. It's like, whatever. I was about to win the Heisman, so I think it's like, how much better does it get than that? But it's like, you did that in spite of what you were going through. So that's my thing about it. It's like, I'm not going to tell, I'm not going to say what, his thing does because of that thing. Now, like, I don't know if Colin will answer the question. Y'all should just ask him, like, what was your injury? Like, y'all see him, I'm assuming. So,
we should. I feel like we probably have, but it's been a while. So you're right. Next time we get him in a media availability, I'll have to just ask him. That's a fair point.
Tell him I told you to ask.
Okay. I will do that. You think that's going to be the tipping point that'll influence him to do it?
I don't think so. I think he might laugh about it. He might still do his politically correct answer. But like I said, like, if you didn't think that he was already like one of the toughest dudes you ever played, every single play, that, like, what he did, what he was going through, makes it even more, like, impressive. Like, so, it's like he has a story like that. The dudes that, like, him, I mean, Arthur too. Well, obviously, even Arthur probably even more so because Arthur was actually tackling people, right? But it's like they have the stories that those guys that want to be like the bad, like, football player, big bad football player with the war stories. They're the type of dudes that have those stories, but they don't even really talk about them. So, like, I think that for me, it was pretty crazy because I've had similar things happen to me. So I understand it.